Okay, it's already 6:02, guys. We'll start quickly without any further delay. We have a lot to cover, just giving you a heads up before. Cool. Anyways, good evening and welcome back. Welcome back to your own channel, Scholars. I'm hoping everybody is having a good day. So, that being said, I'll just do a quick round of intros. A couple of you are already here, but I'm hoping others will join in the next 2-3 minutes. Um, okay, Aditya is here. Hi, Aditya. Good evening. Cool. I'll quickly do a round of intros in the meanwhile. So we've already done one part on this chapter called as Changing Cultural Traditions on Tuesday. So this is a continuation of that. It's part 2. And a little bit about myself. I'm the history educator here at Unacademy Scholars channel, and I take classes for both standard 11th and 12th. And as far as my educational qualifications are concerned, I have recently graduated from Ashoka University, and I have a major in history and a minor in political science. So, talking a little bit about Unacademy's Plus features, you can actually learn live from the comfort of your own houses. There's unlimited access to all of these courses, and these are offered by top educators of India, and all of them are available on one single platform. And there are regular doubt clearing sessions, answer writing sessions, practice tests, and live test series. There's exhaustive coverage of syllabus, mentorship and guidance, along with access to study materials, which are usually in the form of PDF. So when it comes to pricing for Plus, the prices you see on the left side of the screen, these ones are the actual prices. You can use the code TUM10 and get a 10% off straight away, and these are the post discounted prices you see on the right. Uh, Something about iconic subscription, there's personal mentorship provided, there are live doubt solving sessions, weekly reports, parent connect, and also study planners. The pricing for iconic, it actually has 9 different ranges of subscriptions starting from 3 months to 48 months. The same thing here as well. The prices on the left side are the actual prices. By using the code TUM10, you'll get a 10% off, and these are the post discounted prices. So have a quick look at them and feel free to go ahead with whichever one you feel comfortable. And nextly, there's something called as Unacademy's Combat Scholarship Test. It's basically, as the name suggests, it's a scholarship test for 11th standard students, and it usually happens on every Sunday at 1 p.m. And it's the format of the test is as such that 30 questions are given, and there's a time frame of 60 minutes to answer these questions, available in both Hindi and English. The link for that is in the description below of this video. Go check that out, enroll yourselves and take part in the quiz. And finally, there's something called as Bugs Bounty. It's basically an Academy special feature where you can report any sort of inappropriate content. You can also be the first one to report that issue, and you can claim a prize for that if you're the first one. And the form for that is in the description below of this video. You can use that to report any inappropriate content. So yeah, that's a little bit pitch we had for today. Okay, Karan has a question regarding humanities. No, Karan, it's actually for sciences and commerce students, I'm supposing. I don't think it's for humanities, Karan. Okay, so we'll quickly start the continuation of this chapter. So in the last class, we were talking about what humanitas are, who introduced this term, and yes, Aditya, I was about to do that. Thanks for asking. So I was just saying that in the last class, we were talking about the origin of the word humanitas. Yeah, that's a Latin word, and when it's translated into English, it's basically humanities, and that is the term we use in the present day 21st century, right? It's nothing but learning about so many other things, yeah, other than the religious features. For example, history, literature, architecture, the way of life, right? So all of these subjects together combined, there are 5 major components, right? So these 5 major components combined together form the humanities field, right? And even though in the university education and all, law was the important subject, or like many people started studying law because there was a demand for lawyers in the society, but nonetheless in the 15th century and all, even humanities subjects became very very popular, especially in Italy, right? So that was the last point we made in the last class. Okay, so with that little summarization of what humanities is, we'll quickly delve into today's topic, right? It's titled as the humanist view of history. So again, we're still dealing with humanities, right? We're still dealing with what that humanistic view is. So what is the humanist view of history? So that's the question, right? So humanists actually thought that they were restoring true civilization after centuries of darkness. Again, the backdrop of this being once the Roman Empire saw a downfall in the 5th, 6th centuries CE, the that's like in the ancient times, right? 5th, 6th century is ancient times. So once the Roman Empire collapsed, these humanists called a millennium or 1,000 years after the downfall of the Roman Empire as Dark Ages. Right? So basically, these humanists are calling the centuries between 6th and 15th centuries almost a millennium, right? These 900,000 years, humanists are referring to them as the Dark Age. Again, what is Dark Age? What are its components? It's basically a period where no development is happening, or like no significant development is happening. Like everything is just dry, economy is not flourishing, there's no political stability and all that stuff. These are the components which categorize Dark Age, right? So humanists are basically calling these 9th, 10th centuries as Dark Age, right? And once they started studying humanities, they are referring to that period as revival of the true civilization, right? So understand the difference here, right? We basically are categorizing this into 3 periods, right? The first period till the Roman Empire was there was a good age, like everything was developing, economy was flourishing and all that stuff. After that, it was Dark Age because nothing is going right. And finally, from the 15th century, because humanists are studying humanities, again they are claiming that they are restoring true civilization. Right? So that's the basic point we had here. Aditya has a point. Exactly. Aditya, you have the right point there. We discussed about 5 elements in the last class, right? Including grammar, architecture, history, literature, and something else. I forgot what the 5th point is. But like these 5 components together constitute what humanities are, right? So whenever I refer to the term humanities, these 5 subjects are considered, right? So you have the point there, Aditya. That's absolutely right. Karan, the mentee for this quiz is going to happen next Tuesday, right? This is a very small chapter, guys. So hardly it will take 3 sessions to complete. It's already the second part. So probably we'll do the third part on Saturday, like day after tomorrow. And then we can have a quiz directly on Tuesday, right? So the quiz will be on Tuesday, Karan. Okay. So I'm hoping everybody understood what dark age is, because most of the stuff we'll be talking about in the next slide refers to this term called dark age, right? Yes, thanks for putting that up, Aditya. Guys, if you have any doubts regarding what these five components are of humanities, refer to Aditya's comment. It's basically grammar, moral philosophy, rhetoric, poetry, and history. Right? So, important components, please do remember. Uh, cool. So, following this dark age, these humanists started calling it as the revival of true civilization, right? And they gave it a new uh, name to it called as the New Age, right? It's New Age. There's no doubt, like there's no speculations and stuff. Everybody undoubtedly calling this period from 15th century as the New Age, right? So, as I was telling you, the period after the Roman Empire saw its downfall till the revival of this true civilization, it was basically called as the Middle Ages or the medieval period. We've discussed about this medieval period in so many other classes, right? So, in the Middle Ages, humanists basically argued that in the Middle Ages, church had so much control over the individual's mind. We've discussed this in the last class, right? Everything was controlled by the church. Church used to regulate all of the terms on which a person is supposed to lead his or her life, right? And whatever knowledge that Greeks and Romans produced in the Roman Empire, all of that is gone, all of that is damaged, right? Nobody is talking about that knowledge. There was Aristotle, Greek, Euclides, so many great philosophers from the Roman Empire. They produced so much knowledge, but because of the dark age, all of that was gone. Nobody is talking about it. Everybody is being controlled by the church, right? So that's what humanists state. And to differentiate that period from the 15th century, right, humanists gave this two words called as medieval and modern. So whatever is before 15th century, it's called as medieval, and whatever is after 15th century is called as modern period, right? So I'm hoping this distinction is clear. Yes, Aditya, we'll get to that in the next slide. The differentiation of different periods according to the centuries. Okay. If we'll move on to the next. So, this periodization is something which was given by these humanist scholars in 15th century, right? So, they have a set period, they have a set time frame where they've divided it on. So, whenever I refer to as Middle Ages, that's basically also called as medieval times, and modern is modern, as we all know. Within the Middle Ages itself, we have three subdivisions, right? The first is 5th to 9th century. It's called as the Dark Ages. It's the immediate period after the Roman Empire saw a downfall and everything is just not going right. Like economy was bad, there was so much of political fragmentation and therefore political instability. Society was also not that developing. There's no new culture and all that stuff. So because of that, it's termed as the Dark Age, right? And the next subdivision we have under Middle Ages is 9th to 11th. It's basically the early Middle Ages. And from the 11th to 14th, it's the late Middle Ages, right? So please remember these demarcations clearly. It's important for the examination point of view. So 5th to 9th, Dark Ages, 9th to 11th, early middle, and 11th to 14th, late middle. So all of this together combined, we call it as the medieval period, right? So that's the periodization given by humanists. But recently in the 21st century, so many historians have started questioning this division. They don't agree with this rigid division because it's not flexible enough. See, things usually don't happen in a chronological manner. Let's say, for example, in France, yeah, in the 7th 8th century, let's say, still there was so much of cultural development, there was so much of political stability, unlike the scenario in East Europe or somewhere else, right? So in the same period, two different regions might experience things differently. So it's not correct on our part as historians to call these ages by giving them one particular name, right? So that's why historians were not satisfied with this kind of division and they started questioning it, right? So obviously, as more and more research is being conducted in the 20th 21st centuries, we have so much of information coming up, right? And historians started criticizing this demarcation, yeah. And also, other than that, guys, do you think it's fair to call some period as a dark age? I mean, it's an open-ended question, right? Would you yourself call a certain age or a certain century as a dark century or as a dark age? Um, I mean, you can give your views in the chat box if you would want to call something as a dark age or not. But at least as far as I am concerned, I don't think I want to give that name to any century, because some or the other developments will definitely happen during a point of time, during a period of time, right? Any developments, right, for that matter, be it culturally, politically, economically, technologically, right? Some random development will definitely happen. So I don't think it's fair enough to call a particular period as a dark age in that sense, right? Yeah, Aditya has a comment here. I don't think so, because century mein har cheez unstable thi, like political, economic, social and cultural. Yeah, that's a good point, Aditya. Cool. So it's good that you're comparing like the past times with the present example. You're right, because everything will not go properly at all times, right? So that's how society works. So yeah. Again, that's debatable, right? Whether you want to call it as a dark age or whether you want to call it, look at it on the bright side and call it as a, like, some other name, opposite of dark, right? Like a light age or like a good age, developmental age, right? So that's up to you, whether you want to look at the bad side of it and call it the dark age, or whether you want to look at the good side of it and call it a technologically developmental age. That's again depends on the individual. So, but at least as far as I am concerned, I don't think we should call them as dark ages. Again, you're free to hold your entitled to your opinions. That's totally okay. Aditya, I was just about to say that, right? I think it's unfair. I don't agree with this point where you're calling some random age as dark age, because that's how the society works. At some point of time, you are going to experience something bad. So, yeah, I don't think it's fair, Aditya. Okay, any questions still here before we move on to the next slide? Okay, Aditya says clear. Good. I'm hoping everybody else understood as well. Okay, so with that backdrop, let's just move on to the next subtopic, which is titled as Science and Philosophy, the Arabs' Contribution. Again, till now we've only heard that Greek people and Roman people were the actual categories of people who contributed something to the society in terms of knowledge, right? Be it artistic knowledge, philosophical knowledge, technological knowledge, scientific knowledge, whatever it is, we've always attributed this knowledge to Greek and Roman scholars, right? In fact, it is true because mostly they came up with all of these inventions and stuff. But why are we talking specially about the Arabs' contribution? What did they do? Did they invent something, or in what way did they actually contribute to this knowledge system? Right? So we'll look at that. Um, Much of the writings of the Greeks and Romans have been familiar to the upper class, not to everybody, right? Because everybody couldn't read and write back in those times. There was very low literacy rate. So only the people who could actually read and write, they mostly came from the noble families, like higher elite people. They had access to all of these Greek and Roman writings, but they never passed it down to the other population. Yeah, like the lower class people, or like ordinary common people never had access to these Greek and Roman texts. So nobody knew about them, right? So, but in 14th century, what happened is these Greek and Roman texts started being translated into other languages, other local languages, right? Plato, Aristotle, all of these are great philosophers, right? Great Greek and Roman philosophers. Their works were being translated into local languages, yeah, and all of this translation credit goes to Arab people, right? All of these translators are Arab people. That's why we're talking about Arabs' contribution. In fact, that is a good contribution, right? Because if they wouldn't have translated, nobody would have known about it. Yeah, only because of their efforts of translation, everybody is getting to read them because it's in the local language. Local language everybody knows, but not Greek and Latin, right? So that's why Arab scholars played a very, very crucial role in terms of translation, and especially like Plato and Aristotle works. Again, Plato had a different name in Arabic language as well as Aristotle. Plato was referred to as Aflatun. The spelling is here. Very important, guys. Please make note of it. And on the other hand, Aristotle was referred to as Aristu, right? Aristu. I've underlined these. Please make a note of them. Um, so these Aflatun and Aristu were Arabic terms for Plato and Aristotle, but nonetheless, Arab translators translated their works into the local languages for people to read, right? So some European scholars as well, they read Greek in Arabic translation, right? And Greek people also translated works of Arabic and Persian scholars for further transmission to other European countries, right? So translations kept happening basically at the end of the century because everybody wanted to read. There was a demand for these texts, but unfortunately they couldn't read because of language barrier, and that is why all of these translators started working on translation works, right? But like, what is the content of these books? They're wanting to read, but like, what are they wanting to read? We have a number of them, starting from natural sciences, medicine, chemistry, astronomy, mathematics, or just like fictional literature. So all of these categories were the contents of these translation works, right? So amidst all of this, Arab people played a huge, crucial role. Any questions still there? If there are no questions, then we can go ahead. Okay, thanks Aditya for responding. Cool. So now we'll talk a little bit. Yeah, sorry, just give me a second, guys. Yeah, so we're still talking about the translation works, and we'll talk a little bit about the connection between these Greek and Arabic scholars, right? So everybody knows who Ptolemy is because we've encountered Ptolemy in the last chapters, like I think in the 5th chapter as well, right? So Ptolemy actually wrote a book called as Almagest or Almagest, right? It's a work on astronomy, and since he's a Greek scholar, he wrote this book in Greek before 140 CE. It's like the first century of the first century after birth of the Christ, right? And later, this book got translated into Arabic. So, if you look at the name of this text, it's called as Al-Majest, but if it will be very easy if you write al separately and majest separately, right? Because this word al or this article al is a very Arabic term. It's not an English term, it's not a Latin term or a Greek term, but the word al is a Arabic term. Again, you come across several names like al-Baruni or al something, like names of people, names of books, everything start with al in Arabic. So this al is an Arabic term, but the fact that Ptolemy is a Greek scholar, now there's some merge happening, and this basically brings out the point that there was a connection between Arabic and Greek, right? So that's one example. And among the Muslim writers, basically Arabic people, Arabic scholars, who were regarded as men of wisdom in the Italian world, there were a couple of them who were very, very famous, right? The first one is Ibn Sina, very important figure. Remember his name, also the spelling. His name is Ibn Sina, and he was actually referred to as Avicenna in Latin. See, these names differed from language to language, right? For example, take our names, right? Our names are the same in any language. My name is same in English, in Latin, in French, everywhere. But back in those times, even the names of people had different names in different languages, right? So Ibn Sina was actually referred to as Avicenna in Latin. He was an Arab physician and philosopher belonging to Bukhara in Central Asia. That's where he was famous. And nextly there was Al-Razi. In Latin he was referred to as Rhazes. The spelling is here again. He was also famous because he authored a medical encyclopedia, right? Uh, any questions still here, guys? Okay, Ansh is here with us. Hi, Ansh. Class 12, it's tomorrow, Ansh. Again, we had a class yesterday. We'll be having it tomorrow again at 6 in the evening, Ansh. Okay, cool. So these are the two important figures, but along with them, we also have another famous Arabic scholar who was who was prominent in the Italian world. His name is Ibn Rushd, right? Ibn Rushd. In Latin, he was called as Averroes. Yeah. So he was an Arab philosopher, but he lived in Spain for most of his life. So he actually tried to address issues like the conflicts between philosophical knowledge and religious beliefs. They're two contradicting concepts. They don't go hand in hand. But Ibn Rushd actually tried to talk about these concepts in his book, and that's how he became famous, right? The same method of talking about stuff was adopted by Christian thinkers later while they were writing their own books, right? So humanists basically reached out to people in a variety of ways. Yeah, by writing books, by sculpting images, whatever means are possible, humanists wanted to convey their message to the larger audience, and they adopted so many various means in order to accomplish their task. Right? Okay. Yes, Aditya, you're absolutely right. We'll be having a mentee on Tuesday for this chapter, Aditya. Okay, so through the curricula or curriculum in universities, right? Mostly, as I was saying, it was dominated by law because the society demanded so many lawyers and solicitors, right? That's why people were studying law in most of the universities. But slowly, in the 15th, 16th centuries, subjects or departments like medicine, theology, humanist subjects, these five components, they are also slowly started to gaining importance in these university educations, right? That's not just happening in Italy per se, but this importance was spread throughout the European countries like France, England, Germany, Belgium, like every part of the European continent, right? Um, yeah, so that's the Arabs' contribution. Before moving on to the next sub theme, yes, Aditya, we can do that. Once the mentee is over, then we can move on to the next chapter. Industrial Revolution, right? Very important chapter, guys, and also interesting in some sense. Okay, so we'll start with artists and realism, right? We know who artists are, yeah, like painters, sculptors, different other fields of architectural workers as well. We call them as artists, right? But what is realism? I will explain the meaning of the term realism towards the end of this sub-theme because that will be much clearer then after looking at the points of artists, right? So just hold on to that realism definition. We'll just look at artists for now, right? So formal education is not the only means through which humanists wanted to spread their message. When I mean formal education, I'm referring to university education, right? It's not the only way, it's not the only means, but there were other means also adopted to spread their humanistic ideas, and art, architecture, and books were few of those methods, right? Art in terms of paintings, drawings, sculptures, then architecture in terms of the building designs and stuff, and then the books, um, written documents, right? They were very, very effective in spreading humanist ideas, right? Artists were basically inspired by studying works of the past, especially by looking at the Roman art and architecture, right? Romans actually had a very, very developed and sophisticated way of artistic styles. So, people in the 15th century in Italy and generally Europe were inspired by looking at Roman culture, right? So, the material remains of Roman culture were also coming up, right? Because archaeology started gaining importance. People started excavating these Roman sites and they started finding so many Roman cultural elements, especially material remains like sculptors, statues, some random buildings, and all. Even though they are not in perfect shape, they are basically in ruins, right? But people were still excited to look at them or to admire that work of art, right? So people have been studying in great detail about the ruins of ancient Rome and also other cities of ancient Rome. Yeah. Uh, One special feature again of Roman architecture is Roman art is a perfectly proportioned men and women sculpted so many centuries ago. Again, what do we mean by perfectly proportioned? Um, it's just that the head, the legs, or whatever parts of the body are perfectly aligned, right? Head is not too small, hands are not too large. It's not like that. Everything is just in perfect shape, right? So that's what we call as a perfectly proportioned. That's the unique feature of Roman art and architecture, because before Romans nobody did this. Some or the other part used to go wrong, like either head was too big or legs were too small or something like that. But Romans were the first people to come up with perfectly proportioned human figures, right? And Italian sculptures in the 15th century actually liked that point, right? They started admiring Roman culture because of that. Yeah. Um, there was one particular scholar, not scholar, sorry, artist. His name was Donatello. Very important figure, guys. Please remember his name and contribution. So, in the year 1416, this person by name Donatello, he broke new ground with his lifelike statues. Again, what does this mean? He started making statues which are of life size. As in, like, if a person is 6 foot tall, then his statue will also be 6 foot tall. Right? They just look like real life figures. Right? So that was first done by Donatello in 1416. Yeah? Remember that point, very, very important. Okay. Artists concerned to be accurate was helped by the work of scientists. Again, there's a lot of relationship between scientists and artists, because scientists, as we know, have to be very, very accurate in their details, right? They just can't be very approximate, they can't be rough. They have to be very, very accurate about their details, because they're dealing with human bodies, for example fossils, right? So in the same manner, artists also started becoming very accurate in their work. They were inspired by the scientists, and both of them in fact worked hand in hand. Yeah, we'll look at one example of that, like how they worked together. To study bone structures, right, artists went to the laboratories of medical schools. So what do we see here? A communication between artists and scientists, or like labs of medical schools. Yeah. Um, one important professor by name Andreas Vesalius. He lived in the 16th century. He was a Belgian by birth, and he was a professor of medicine at the University of Padua. Padua is one of the greatest universities back in those times, right? So he was actually the first person to dissect the human body. Again, what do we mean by dissect? It means cutting the human body, right? And afterwards examining what are the internal parts of the body, right? So we call that as modern physiology nowadays, right? So this modern physiology began when Andreas Vesalius actually cut the first human body in 16th century, right? Painters did not have older works to use as a model. Yeah, they just couldn't refer to any of the older works, because Roman people never painted as much. They were just interested in sculptures and architecture, not paintings. So painters did not basically have a reference. That doesn't mean they are performing well in their job, not performing well in their jobs. Even though they don't have a reference, even though there's no motivation for them, inspiration for them, they are still painting such amazing works of art that they almost look very realistic, right? They are painting as realistically as possible. So everybody is just doing so great. Everybody is excelling in their own fields, right? Scientists, professors, sculptors, artists, painters, everybody, right? Everybody is excelling. Okay. No problem, Aishi, but I'm glad you're back. Hi. Preeti is also here with us. Hi, Preeti. Okay, I'll quickly move on to the next slide. In case you have any questions at any point of time, please feel free to stop me and ask, guys. Um, so the next point is they found, we're basically talking about the sculptors and painters, right? So they found that a knowledge of geometry helped them understand perspective, because like with the help of geometry, there's so much that the artist can do, especially when we talk about proportions, right? Proportions definitely involve geometry. If you're an artist, you yourself will know that how geometry is used in artwork, right? So in that sense, people started learning geometry because it will be useful for them to do their own work, and they also started understanding that by giving it some sort of lighting or some sort of shading to the existing drawing or painting, you can actually translate that into a three-dimensional figure. The process of transmitting from 2D to 3D figures, right? That also they learned. Yeah. Aditya, just hold on. You're almost there, Aditya. Partly correct. But just give me like 2 minutes. I'll give the definition of what realism is. Right? So that 3D figures started developing, and then oil painting or oil pastels started becoming famous. In order to paint, these painters started relying on oil colors because they gave some sort of richness to the color, richness to the paintings, right? So that was the other development. Yeah. And in the colors and designs of costumes in many paintings, right, like how to design a costume, how to um, paint a costume, right? For all of these, the inspiration was drawn from the Persian art, right? And all of this credit has to go to Mongols, because Mongol people were actually transmitting this knowledge into the European regions, right? So coloring and designing of costumes. So these are few important developments that are happening. And the final concluding point of all this is, we talked about anatomy, where we talked about dissecting the bodies. We talked about geometry, helping in 3D figures. Then we talked about a little bit about physics and all. So all of these, yeah, they gave a new quality to Italian art. So again, what is the result of this quality? Whatever work is being produced, all of that started looking as real, right? So the word real is very important to us. So back to Aditya's point to define what realism is, to put it in very simple words, these pieces of art and architecture, these works of art and architecture, which almost looked real, as if they are real life figures, right? This concept is called as realism, because these architectures, architects, artists, all of them are putting in so much effort, yeah, adopting so many mechanisms and techniques to make their art look lively, to look as if they are real, right? So that process is called as realism, or that process is referred to as realism, right? So now if there are any questions regarding realism, ask me, because I'm hoping with this concluding point things might have become clear as to what realism is. But in case there are any questions, let me know, guys. Aishi, I'll try. Let's see when this when the class will end. Let's see. Hina, 11th standard students, just hold on for a second. Hina has a question. Hina, who told that burials are not found during while digging the land? That's not the case, Hina. Like, whenever the archaeological excavations are happening at any point in the world, at any place in the world, if there are burials there in that particular place, definitely burials can be found. There's no misconception as to burials are not found. No, like even if you go back to like Harappan period and all, we did find a lot of burials along with pottery. Yeah, like in these burials only, na, we found so many potteries, jewelries, ornaments, and all that stuff, right? So, no, burials are actually found, Hina. I hope that answers your question, Hina, but like any clarifications needed, just get back to me. Okay, you got it. Cool. आदित्य हैज अ कमेंट, रियलिज्म मतलब कोई भी चीज जो रियल टाइप बनती है. हाँ, fair enough. I could say that in very very simple crude terms. We could say that, Aditya. Examples: sculpture, portrait. Right, absolutely right. I was exactly talking about that real life size figures, right? If the person is of 6 feet, the sculptures are also made of 6 feet. It almost looks like a real thing. So anything which is a real type, it's called as realism. Right, absolutely right, Aditya. Okay, from there we'll quickly shift to talking about architecture. Right, till now we've talked about art. Let's talk about architecture for a little bit. So, the city of Rome revived in a spectacular way in the 15th century in terms of its buildings, monuments, great works of architecture. The city of Rome actually saw a lot of development in the 15th century, right? And why is that happening? This again has to do with the political issues, the conflicts between popes and all. Just to give you a backdrop, from 1378, actually, there was some sort of political scenario going on between uh, popes. Again, all of us know who popes are, right? So, there were two different groups supporting two different popes. Both of them wanted to assert their own dominance, their own mastery, right? So, that kind of conflict was going on between two rival popes, right? But in the 15th century, somehow they did something and stopped this rivalry, and now only one pope existed. Right? So now there are no political conflicts. Because they have so much time now, because there are no political conflicts, this pope figure actually started investing or encouraging the study of Rome's history. Right? And that is how later we'll see that architecture was developed. So all of this credit can be given to the interest of Pope to actually develop the study of Rome's history. Right? So the ruins in Rome were carefully excavated by archaeologists. Again, you have to remember that archaeology is a newly developing field in the 15th century. Before that, people didn't know what archaeology was. It was a very new development or new department, right? So then first they started excavating Rome, and then they came across all of these amazing monuments, like beautiful sculptures and all that stuff, right? Since these were actually belonging to Rome, which is like a millennium before, a millennium earlier, right? To differentiate that with the modern world, people started calling this Roman style of architecture as classical architecture, right? Don't get confused. Classical architecture basically refers to Roman style of architecture, right? It's ancient in nature. It's way before the period we're talking about right now. Yeah. So that again basically gives you the definition of classical, right? Any questions in regards to classical? Please ask right now. Okay, if there are none, I'll talk about the next point. Okay, so popes, who are obviously wealthy, richer. Then there are wealthy merchants and aristocrat, obviously noble people, and also they had a lot of riches. They had that money, right? They had that money to employ architects, like give salaries to the architects and ask them to make something which they like build something which they like, right? According to the classic architectural styles, because people loved Roman architecture, right? So these people actually funded or gave salaries to architects to build something which is of a classical style, right? These artists and sculptors were also like went on to decorate buildings with different paintings, sculptures and reliefs, right? So which means architecture is greatly flourishing in the 15th century. Yeah. Some individuals were equally skilled as painters, sculptors, and architects. Again, everybody started learning what this art and architecture is. Um, we have few important figures again, right? Because we do have somebody excelling too well in that particular field. In the same manner, we also have two figures here, right? Who were great architects. The first is Michelangelo Buonarroti. If you can't pronounce his name, just leave it. Just remember it as Michelangelo, right? He lived in the 15th, like late 15th and early 16th century. So he had like 2-3 great works under his name. The first is the ceiling that he painted for the Pope in Sistine Chapel. It's in Rome. Yeah. Then there's another sculpture called as the Pieta. This Pieta figure is there in your textbook, so just refer back to your textbook to what it exactly looked like. And then his design of the dome of St. Peter's Church. All of them are in Rome. So this person, Michelangelo, was actually famous for doing these three important works. Yeah, very impressive examples. And then the second figure we have is Filippo Brunelleschi. Yeah, he lived in the late 14th and early 15th century, like a century before Michelangelo, right? This architect designed spectacular Duomo of Florence, yeah, and he started his career as a sculptor and then became an architect, right? So these two are very important names or figures when it comes to architecture. Highly urge you all to remember these names somehow, do and like remember. Yeah. Another remarkable change was that from time to time artists were known individually by name but not as a group. Again, it's a good thing, right? Because for talented individuals they are gaining name and fame. It's a good thing because their work is being acknowledged, their work is being admired. Yeah. Now people are not just referring to as a group of artists. They're referring to individual names like Michelangelo, Filippo, right? So that kind of individuality became prevalent. Like it was widespread, right? So that's architecture. We'll quickly talk about printed books and then we can end the class. We still have like 5 minutes to go, but like I swear I'll finish in 10 minutes, guys. So if people in other countries wanted to see paintings, sculptures or buildings of great artists, because these are all material remains, one often has to travel to Italy or travel to Rome or wherever these monuments are situated, because they can't be like moved from one place to another or they can't be replicated, right? But in case of written words or books for that matter, they can travel from one place to another. Yeah. Initially it was difficult because there were not many copies. People had to like write them by hand and all that stuff. But One great revolution came around in the 16th century, which is the mastery of the technology of printing. People knew how to print. People have invented printing machines, printing presses. Yeah, that became much easier for people to access different books because so many copies were being circulated across Europe. Right? Again, this technology of printing, all of the credit has to go to Chinese because they were the people who actually invented printing technology for the first time. Yeah. And Mongol rulers also have to take credit for this because when European traders and diplomats started going to Mongol regions for trade purposes or something else, they picked these aspects from Mongol dynasty, from Mongol kingdom. Right? So Europeans were not the inventors. Chinese were the inventors and European people learnt it from the Mongol rulers. Right? Exactly, Aditya. Your point is right. Chinese people were the first people to invent printing machines or printing technology. Yeah. Okay, and see, Chinese were the inventors. They didn't have to do anything with Europeans. Now the question is, how did Europeans learn about this printing technology? They learned it from the Mongols. Mongols learned it from Chinese. Right? So you understand the connection here? From Chinese, it went down to Mongols, and from Mongols, Europeans learned. Right? So I'm hoping the Mongol contribution is clear there, Aditya. Okay, cool. Ayushi, it's 3 parts. We just have like 1 part remaining to go on Saturday, Ayushi. Cool. So, in fact, it's not just the printing technology, right? It's the invention of firearms, invention of the compass, invention of abacus. All of these European people did not invent them. It was in fact Chinese people who invented, and from there on somehow it passed down to the Europeans. Right? Our main focus here is printing technology. So, as I was telling you, before the printing machine was there, everything was handwritten, right? It was very difficult because it used to take a lot of time to write one copy and therefore it couldn't be circulated much. But once in 1455, yeah, almost 150 copies of Bible were printed in the workshop of Johannes Gutenberg. Again, all of us know who Johannes Gutenberg is. He's a very famous German national, German person um, who made the first printing press in Europe. Right? So the first thing that he did was print 150 copies of Bible. Yeah. Um, in 1500, many classical texts, nearly all in Latin, had been printed in Italy. Yeah. Again, the basic point being printing started gaining importance, and as the printing process went on, it was basically easier for people to access these printed documents. Let's say, for example, a college student. Yeah, just like us, a college going university student. Um, if there are no textbook or if there's no printing available, all he has is the lecture of the teacher. Like when he's in the class, he has to pay undivided attention. He has to note down every point that the professor or the teacher is saying. So in that case, it must be a little taxing or tiring, right? But now, because of printing technology, textbooks are being printed or materials are being printed, which became easier for the college going students. Right? So it benefited a lot of people. Yeah? Ideas, opinions, information, philosophical questions, humanities subjects, everything started spreading very widely, and that too at a faster rate. And all of this credit goes to printing technology. Right? Yeah. Now, hundreds and hundreds of people could access it because they have different copies to read. they can buy copies for themselves. Yeah. As a result, the reading habit also developed among people. Yeah, people became literate. People now can read, and there was a reading habit among people. The chief reason that the humanist culture of Italy spread more rapidly across the Alps is in present day France roughly, right? The reason why the humanist culture spread very fast is because of printing books, right? Because printing materials started circulating at a very, very faster rate. Yeah. Again, like, why only in 15th century? Aristotle, Plato, the people we've been talking about from the early centuries, they were also great intellectuals. They also produced so much knowledge. Then why didn't people know about them? The very same reason, right? Because people could not access their ideas. They were only limited to local regions, right? Let's say Plato was living in one particular town. Only that town people knew about what Plato was saying, because Plato could not travel to every town and tell his message. And there was no printing press available to spread the word. So that's the difference between the Plato and Aristotle generation and the 15th century, 16th century generation. Right? So now I hope that gets your point. Ayushi, no worries. It's just that we've done one part before this. This is the second part. I'm hoping you can attend the class on Thursday. So just like refer back to the video or something. It must be fine, Ayushi. Absolutely, Aditya. All the credit goes to printing press, right? That is exactly the reason why culture didn't spread back then, but it's spreading in the 15th, 16th centuries, right? That's the gist of it, Aditya. Good. Okay. Yes, the next class is on Saturday, Aditya. Someone has a question. Account says ESO OP, but like I don't know who that is. But no, I don't take sociology classes for 12th. I only teach history here. Okay, quickly just give me 5 minutes, I'll wrap this up. We'll talk about a new concept of human beings, right? Like, what are human beings perceived as? One of the feature of humanistic culture, as all of us have repeated this point again and again, that there is no more control of religion on human life. Now he's a free bird. He has that freedom to lead his own life according to his own terms, right? Italians were strongly attracted to material wealth, power, and glory, right? But in some sense, these wealth, power, and glory were also totally attached to religion in some sense. Yeah. So these two scholars by name Francesco Barbaro and Lorenzo Valla, right? These are people from Venice. Venice is in Italy right now. Yeah. So these two people in their lifetime, they actually criticized this element of connection between power, glory, and religion, right? They didn't like it. So they wrote books and they started criticizing all of these methods, saying it's not a good thing. Power and religion should be disconnected. Material wealth and religion should be disconnected, right? So Lorenzo Valla and Francisco were responsible for that. Yeah. And people also started gaining a sense that good manners is really, really important. Yeah. Until then, people, I don't know, like behaved in a barbaric manner or something like that, like uncivilized manner. But from the 15th century, the whole outlook of a human is changing, right? He's dressing properly, he's speaking politely, he's inculcating all of those good manners within him, right? He's basically becoming a cultural person, like a civilized person, right? And he had the ability to shape their own life. He need not rely on anybody now. He need not rely on religion. He had that freedom to build his own life, right? He also understood that money and power are not the only ways of leading a life, but there is so much more that you can do with your life, right? So all of these like philosophical concepts, the way that a person leads their life is totally changing, right? Any questions still here? Ayushi, that's amazing. 39.2 out of 40. That's great. Congratulations on that. Oh, okay. Aditya, going back to Lorenzo and Francesco. Uh, okay, before talking about them, what was actually happening in the society before 15th century is this wealth or that money you have or the power, name, fame, the glory, all of these concepts were somehow related to religion in some manner. We don't know how, but somehow they were related to religion, right? So Lorenzo and Francisco were basically saying that that's not the way you lead your life. Yeah, you're not supposed to do that. They should be separated. Religion should not be connected with the wealth, or it should not be connected with power and glory. So Lorenzo and Francisco were criticizing this connection. Yeah, I'm hoping you got that. Basically, they were criticizing religion, Aditya, if that kind of simplifies your point. These two people were basically criticizing the elements of religion. Okay, you got it. Cool. There's still like 3 more slides to go. Should I continue or should we deal with this in Saturday's class, guys? Do you all have like 5 more minutes of patience, or should we just end the class here and talk about it in the next class? Just let me know if you want me to continue or we. Thanks, Ayushi, for that compliment. Okay, Ayushi and Aditya says continue basically. Cool. It's just 3 slides. I'll try to finish it up early. Okay, so the aspirations of women, right? So all of us know that women are not equally treated in a society, and most of the societies are patriarchal societies, right? That is exactly what was happening in the 15th century as well. We look at some of the elements in detail, right? The new ideal of individuality and citizenship, these are the concepts that were coming up in the 15th century, right? But only men had this freedom. Like men had that privilege to enjoy that individuality and citizenship. Women were excluded from it, right? Women did not have any powers, they did not enjoy anything, right? Again, especially when talking about aristocratic families, like rich elite people families, right? Men were super dominant, like in public life, in private life, men were dominant, and they were usually the decision makers in their families, right? Women had to stay silent, they can't raise their voice, they can't give their opinion, right? And only sons were educated, women were not given proper education. Yeah. And when during the time of marriage, right, basically women takes some dowry along with her. All of us know what dowry is. So when the women actually, or the wife actually takes this dowry with her, it is invested in the family business, like the husband uses it for his own family business. The money is women's, but even though the money is women's, women does not have any say in the family business. She can't tell, like you should run the business like this, you should take these features, you should implement these policies, blah blah blah. Women should not say that, even though it's her money. Typical patriarchal societies, right? and marriages were intended to strengthen business alliances. They were not like personal relationships, right? Let's say two families are there, both of them are business families. If the son and daughter of their families marry each other, it sort of becomes a business alliance. One is helping the other's business. It's not looked like a matrimonial relation, but it's often looked like a business alliance. I don't know whether it's a good thing or a bad thing. You can have your own choice on that. But yeah. Um, and in some cases, let's say during the time of marriage, the wives or the bride's parents will tell that we will give so and so much as dowry while getting married. But in case they are not able to give so much or whatever is demanded by the groom's side, it's horrible that these daughter-in-laws are pushed away from their in-laws' houses. Yeah, they're asked to leave the house, and they were basically sent to convents to live the life of a nun. I mean, not fair, right? Because just because her father is not be able to pay the dowry to the in-laws, she's just pushed away from the house. That's sad. Basically, women did not enjoy a good status, right? Their public role was obviously very, very limited. Yeah, even like coming out of the house and making a public appearance in itself is a great thing for women. Yeah, they were often looked at as keepers of the households, not allowed to come outside. Yeah, just look after the family, just look after the house, that's enough. That's what was happening in the aristocratic families, right? But if you look at the families of like common ordinary people, let's say like merchant families or trader families, right? The situation is a little bit different. I won't say women are privileged enough, but better when compared to aristocratic women. Yeah. Why is that so? Because especially when these merchants and all had their own shops, let's say they are away for some sort of work, then the wife of the family is actually supposed to take care of that shop. Like she is the one who assists the husband in looking after that shop, right? And even let's say when the husband dies, the women had that right to perform a larger public role. Let's say she can carry out all of those death rituals. Yeah, she can take part in all of that. Something better. It's not like totally ideal situation, but some better situations for women in the merchant families, like ordinary people families, right? That's that. A few women were intellectually very creative, yeah, because they wanted to learn, they wanted to be educated, yeah, but because of the family pressure, because father doesn't want to educate her, she couldn't gain much of the education. Most people, most women are like that only, even though they want to learn, they were not able to learn, right? So there was a women scholar. Fortunately, somehow she gained education. She went on to become a scholar, right? She writes in one of her book. Her name is Cassandra Fedel, very important figure, right? So Cassandra Fedel actually writes that even though if the woman is educated, she's not going to gain anything out of it. That doesn't give her the rights. That doesn't mean she can speak up in the family affairs. That doesn't mean she can go out in the public and do whatever she wants. No, she's not going to get that freedom even if she's educated. But still, women wanted to study. Irony, right? Like, there's nothing that she's gaining out of it. But still, she wanted to study. That's what Fedel writes in one of her books. Yeah. Aishi, tips. I mean, there's no like shortcut, right? You just have to like keep talking uh, with everyone possible in like just converse in English. That'll help you in the long run. Like I won't say you'll master it now, but like 1-2 years down the line, you will somehow get a hold of it. Yes, exactly. Aristocratic means high class people and elite people, like richer people basically. That's right, Aditya. Okay, so we'll talk a little bit about Fedel and what did she do. So this Cassandra Fedel was one of the handful of women who questioned the idea that women were incapable of achieving the qualities of a humanist scholar. Again, what does this mean? There was a miscalculated notion in the society that even though women are educated, they can't become the humanist scholar because they don't have that intellectual capacity. They don't have that um, talent to learn such things. That's what people thought. But Fedel actually criticizes that idea. She says that whatever you're saying is crap because we also have the same intellectual capacity in our brains. We can also become humanist scholars if we are given proper education. That's what Fedel says, right? Fedel herself was a great scholar, right? She had this language proficiency in Greek. She also learned Latin, and she used to give all of these speeches and motivational talks and like good talks at the University of Padua. That's a great thing for a woman back in those times, right? Fedel's writings bring into focus the general regard for education in that age. She basically highlights that education is a good thing. People should have their education, but unfortunately, women are not getting access to that education. Those are the main topics around which Fedel's writings are based on. Yeah. She was one of the many Venetius women. Venetius is nothing but belonging to Venice, right? She criticized the republic of the Venice state. We have seen how Italy is a republic, right? In the last class, we've talked about Italy being a republic. She criticizes this republic, saying that whatever the republic is doing, it is doing in the favor of men. It is supporting men. It is pushing men to do something good. But that same level of freedom is not being granted to women. That is one criticism of the republic that Fedel is making, right? That's Fedel. And another important figure we have is Isabella d'Este. She's another famous important women scholar. She is the Marchesa of Mantua. Again, Mantua is a place. Marchesa is the position, let's say roughly equivalent to a queen, right? So she's the queen of Mantua. Her name is Isabella. So for some reason, her husband was not there, like died or illness or something. In that absence, she actually took over the state, like she ruled the state all by herself, right? And she was very admired for it. People actually admired her for her intellectual brilliance, right? So she was a good ruler. So yeah, like again, like looking at all of these, what do we come across? Like, what is the basic conclusion of all of this? Women's writings, if you look at Isabel or if you look at Fedel, their writings revealed their conviction that they should have economic power, property, and education to achieve an identity in a world dominated by men. You can't just randomly become a great person. In order for you to be equal to a man in that society, you need to have education, you need to have property rights, you also need to have good source of income or economic power for you to stand on par with the man, right? So their writings basically indicate that particular point. Okay, so that brings us to the end of the class. I know I kind of like rushed towards the end because of time restrictions, but in case y'all have any questions, we can have like a 5 minutes question and answer session. Just put down all your questions, guys. We can talk about it in detail. Uh, Aditya, Republic, okay, like if you like Google or if you if you search for the meaning of the word republic in dictionary and stuff, it basically says that a country is basically called a republic where the head of that state is elected by the people, right? So for us, like India has different heads of states, like be it prime minister, be it president. US has a president, right? So these heads of the governments or heads of the states, if they are elected by the people directly, then that is called a republican form of government or like republican state, right? So India is a republic because the heads of the state are elected directly by the people, right? So yeah, I'm hoping that's clear, Aditya. Okay, cool. So that brings us to the end of the class. Ayushi, what questions are you exactly referring to? I mean, if you're talking about like the MCQ quizzes and all, once we have a quiz on Tuesday, then probably I can send the same questionnaire on the Telegram channel or something. But other than that, if you want like a separate set of questions, please let me know like which ones exactly do you want. Then we can work on that. Okay, in case you all have any other questions, just type them down in the chat box. I'll wind this up in the meanwhile. Um, Again, just for your information, there is some sort of 15 days crash course happening for 11th standard humanities students. These are the educators, guys. So have a look at them, and if you're interested in this crash course, go join them. It will be highly, highly beneficial, especially for those who didn't finish their term 1 boards. And yeah, there's a special offer going on right now for Plus and Iconic subscriptions. So if you want any of those, go ahead and grab yours before the offer ends. And finally, thank you. Thank you so much. It's been 20 minutes past time, but thanks so much for staying back and listening to it. And yeah, if you like the content of these videos, please do like it, share it as much as possible, and also subscribe to the channel Unacademy. The class is officially over. In case nobody has questions, y'all can leave. But whoever has questions, just stay back. Yeah? Oh, Ayushi in subjective form. Um, I mean, yes, probably I can do that, but like, just give me like a week time or something. Then I can arrange for that, Ayushi. Just give me time. Yeah? Okay, cool. If there are no questions, then we can stop. Okay. There are no questions I see, and therefore I'll end this up. Bye, Aishi. Yeah. Bye, Aditya. Okay, so the next class for you guys is on Saturday, as I was mentioning. It's going to be the last part where we'll be discussing this chapter, after which we'll directly have a quiz without a revision, right? So I'll see you guys on Saturday for the continuation of this chapter. Till then, have a good evening today, have a good day tomorrow, and yeah, stay safe and take care. I'll see you soon. Bye.